Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to a new episode of Discovering Classic Doctor Who. Today, I'm going to be getting back into the Sensorites with Hidden Danger and a Race Against Death. Who could it be racing against death? I don't know. I guess I'll have to find out. But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into this series. The previous episode was a bit slow, and based on some of the comments that have been left, that was kind of the assessment of most people, at least as far as the Sensorites go. It's like, it's a bit slow to start, even by, like, standards of the time. But I'm looking forward to seeing how it proceeds from here. Hopefully things pick up, and, I mean, it's not a bad story so far by any means. It's just, again, a bit slow. But let's get right back into it with Hidden Danger in 3, 2, 1, go! Also, one thing that was pointed out, and I actually read this before I saw the comment, but the Sensorites...
There can't be air outside the spaceship. We can't stop them. We must. Come with me, Barbara.
Don't. They'll only harm her or kill her if you can't.
Let we...
Pausing for just a second. The Sensorites are apparently an inspiration for the Ood. Who knew? You all, before me. Anyway, getting back to it.
You give nothing, she'll die. You were absolutely right, Doctor. Yeah, help us in the dark. Susan, don't join us. I want to talk to you.
The light, Oh, it's all right, John, I'm here.
We're scared, precious.
I can hear them. I know.
The sensory with John and some of the others.
Sorry to keep pausing, but I'm curious, and they probably aren't going to go this direction, but it sounds like him hearing the voices, like that's possibly either an effect of, you know, being attacked by the Sensorites, the telepathy and all that. Could it also be sort of a trigger of, I'm trying to think of the right word so I don't, you know, use the incorrect term, but not psychopathic, schizophrenia, maybe? Something like that. I'll try my best to remember to look up the term, but it's one where you start hearing voices, and I wonder, I don't know, I'm probably way overthinking this, but if they do go that direction, I'm curious to see how it resolves. If the voices are just stuck part of his life. Again, probably way overthinking this, and let's get right back into it. But just a thought.
Elder says he senses great knowledge in you. Ha! I thought so. Bargaining ahead of us. And one must use fire to fight fire. The first elder makes a wise decision.
Also, he's the one wearing the sashes.
These creatures, these earth people, are loud and ugly things. In the desert or in the mountains. I shall not wait. We will not be safe until these earth creatures are dead. I'm glad to address those silent people.
Okay.
Popular. Because your people have been at sea. Then when they are seated, kill them.
Why?
Very well.
I don't understand his motivations.
The man John can be accepted. You shall have my confidence. I gladly accept. I do not trust these earth creatures.
Why?
And second elders are deceived. I question there is no hope. Your friend is dying.
Okay, so it transfers through the water, clearly. A race against death. So, racing against Ian's potential death. Okay. Alright, so this episode was, in my opinion at least, kind of a mixed bag. I'm sure that more is going to come of, like, the city administrator and all that, this apparent possible rebellion in the upcoming episodes, but it, at least in the scope of this episode, a lot of what they did just felt it felt like padding for the episode, especially as they went through all the different circuits and like this switch and that switch and this switch and that switch. I don't know, it just felt empty to me. That's the biggest thing that I have about this episode. Otherwise, I like the way the story is progressing. I do have some questions, though. They mention, or was it Susan, that basically, Susan mentions that she can talk to them through telepathy. But the way it's worded, what's insinuated there is that since they speak telepathically, they're able to communicate with her. But the way it's said sounds like she actually has the ability in general to communicate telepathically. And maybe that was just some misconstrued words, like just poorly written words, or just I personally misconstrued them. Or is that an actual ability of Susan's that is possibly starting to develop, that she actually has some telepathic abilities? I'm legitimately curious there. Again, it may be just something that I'm overthinking, but it would be interesting at the very least if Susan actually had that ability. Like, it's shown in the modern era that the Doctor is able to basically read people's thoughts, maybe even sort of communicate with them by like touching them. But actual telepathic powers, I don't recall there ever actually being a thing for the Doctor. So again, if Susan actually does have that ability, that would be really interesting. But moving on from there, I realize that they couldn't let the set go completely dark. But just the Sensorites' response to Ian turning out the lights is hilarious to me. Just absolutely hilarious. Like the way they responded. And I'm sorry, it just... it's just really annoying to me that these creatures went out into space. They traveled. They were outside of the ship. One of them was outside of the ship, like on one of the windows before they came in. But despite the fact that space is incredibly dark, being in the dark there doesn't freak them out, but being inside and the lights get turned down a little bit does. I don't know. That, in my opinion, is just poor writing. At the very least, I expected them to maybe get a little bit discombobulated. Like all of a sudden, like maybe they have just such poor eyesight in the when the light is low that okay, it's like, you know, they're no longer able to see Susan or any of them. That would be one thing. But that's like they freaked out, like they had just been shot almost. And I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous to me. The next part that I really want to talk about, and this is definitely something that I think will be touched on more as the show goes along, as long as Susan is a part of the show, because I know she leaves eventually, but the concept of Susan growing up, Susan being increasingly tired of being bossed around by the Doctor, being told what to do by the Doctor, not really being given her own authority to speak or make decisions as an adult. It's like the Doctor still very much sees her as a child, talks to her, and coddles her as such. So I'm really interested to see how much that will develop over time, again, as long as she is still on the show. Because I don't know how long that is. And honestly, don't tell me in the comments how long she'll be around, because I am curious to see just how long her stint on the show is. But that going on from that, Barb being left behind. Now, I thought it was strange that it happened halfway through the episode, but since this happened with Ian and the Doctor as well, and was it Susan too? I can't remember if Susan as well, but basically the different actors have had, and they've taken a holiday during filming, so there have been episodes where one of the crew is not there with the rest of them. So I think that this episode was sort of the start of Barbara's time to take a holiday, and I'm guessing at least partway into the next episode, if not the entire next episode as well, will be more of her not no longer, but not being with the rest of the crew because she's not there to film. That's my assumption anyway, and I mean it makes sense because they always had different explanations for those things occurring in previous episodes. Next thing I found interesting is the whole caste system idea of the Sensorites, and it's seemingly the Sensorites live in somewhat of a utopia, despite, you know, them being sick and all that, but in general, it seems like they perceive their lives as being orderly, that what of a utopia, and everyone is satisfied with their positions in life. But alongside of Susan not being satisfied with her role of being seen as just a child, it's clear that what's going on within the Sensorites is the lower levels are they're getting tired of being on the lower levels, and then there's also this aspect of clearly the water, since it's what is making Ian sick so quickly, this disease is being carried through the water. The elders aren't affected by it because they drink from this purified spring, I guess it is. And it's, I don't know, it seems strange to me that someone might not have picked up on that sooner. But yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with the whole caste system here, whether or not that might end up changing through the course of the next few episodes. Maybe the Sensorites will come to realize that they shouldn't just restrict certain things to certain castes, like only the elders can have the purified spring and all that. But then finally, the last thing I want to say about this specific episode, it's in regard to the city administrator and his follower, I guess. But in regard to questioning authority, questioning their government, the way things are set in place, I understand that. But I don't understand why they don't trust the humans. It's like just this absolute, complete distrust. Like, they're not even going to wait to see if any of them does make a suspicious move. It's just, when they get here, we want to kill them. And again, that doesn't make sense to me, because based on what the other Sensorites said, when the other humans came, they didn't, like, attack the Sensorites, seemingly. It's just some of them got in an argument about whether to go or not, and those, or whether to leave or not, and those humans, it's like their spaceship exploded. And since then, by correlation, not necessarily causation, the disease started to spread through the water somehow, which I'm guessing might have something to do with the like the wreckage of the ship, maybe. But still, it doesn't explain to me why they're so distrustful of humans, or Earthlings at least, that they just want to kill them without question. I just don't get it. But maybe we'll get some more information in the upcoming episode, which, my apologies for talking so long about Hidden Danger, but now it is time for a race against death to keep Ian from dying. So let's get going in 3, 2, 1, go.
Your friend is dying.
Sorry, Ian. Budget cuts.
All manner of people, suddenly, without warning.
Water.
Never the elders? No.
We've done everything together. We've come from the spaceship together. We've gone through the city together.
He's the only one that drank the water.
He drank a different kind of water. It's the water.
Hallelujah!
All who drink the aqueduct water die.
Making a list, checking it twice. First district, second district, third district, twice.
I wear your sash of office. Who is to know that I am not the second elder now?
You have a different voice.
Find him.
Going off on an expedition, and I want you to take note of what he says. Listen, Sir John.
Listen to Wrath Precious.
Stay with him. I think he's getting better. So, back to our belladonna. Deadly match.
Oh. Next episode is called Kidnap. Okay. So definitely got a lot more going on in this episode than the previous ones, which is definitely a good thing. I still just... As far as the city administrator's grudge against the humans, I still don't get it. I still don't understand that side of it. The questioning, again, when it comes to the questioning of authority and rebelling against the elders, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand where it's coming from. Maybe just the ability to use the humans as sort of a trigger, or them arriving instigated this, can be one way of looking at it. But as far as just, again, the outright hatred and just not trusting the Earthlings at all doesn't make sense to me. But then again, I'm an Earthling, so I might be biased. But one thing that I'm curious about, and I still don't quite understand it when the Doctor is using it, but salt and water, giving Ian salt and water is an old remedy. Now, like when I've had a sore throat when I was younger, I've been given, what is it? Basically hot, not even tea really, but hot water with lemon juice and some salt, and it would help to soothe the throat. Now that being said, to the best of my knowledge, it didn't really do anything else for me, so I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of the salt and water was to try and help Ian, other than try and make his throat not hurt as much. I don't know. If there's actually something there, like it was just sort of an old-timey home remedy for something, let me know. Or maybe the salt is used to sort of help reduce the amount of poison or something in the body, which the Doctor didn't even know it was poison at the time, so I don't know. I have no idea. But moving on from there, the fact that sound hurts them, well, the Sensorites rather. Now that is something I can understand. It's something that makes a lot more sense. And had that been employed more so than just making the room go dark in Hidden Danger, I feel like the Sensorites freaking out would have made more sense. Like if somehow they had deduced that sound hurt them in addition to the low light, like if the Doctor had yelled at them when the lights went out, that would have worked. But just the darkness by itself, it just doesn't it doesn't work for me anyway as a viewer. But the fact that sound hurts them, since they are telepathic and all, it does make sense, because that anger would be coming not only from them vocally, but would also be portrayed through their mind, their thoughts. So again, that makes sense for me. But moving on from there, going back to Ian for a second, when the doctor asks how he's doing, and he says, it's like, you know, his throat still hurts, so his throat hurts. The doctor asks him if anything else hurts, and he says no. Which, I don't know, if this is supposed to be a deadly disease, which again, I know that he's sort of in the early stages of it, but it made him completely collapse to begin with. So it seems like, you know, just something, other stuff should hurt. Like, you know, he should talk about how his head hurts. Maybe, like, he feels like he's burning up. Something like that. But to him just say, like, he has anything else hurts, he just shakes his head. That especially doesn't make sense, given that when Ian is cured, or when he gets the antidote, that he says it feels like he's been gone over with hammers. So that negates what he said to begin with. And then also, he said he's feeling giddy, which I don't know if that was sort of maybe a sarcastic line that sort of went over my head, and in that case, you know, sort of meant to be a joke that just didn't land with me, or if maybe, I don't know, did giddy have a different meaning back in the 60s? Because in my mind, giddy is just kind of like, I'm so happy, and, you know, just being full of energy and that kind of deal. So in this context, unless he is meant to be saying it sarcastically in a sense, it doesn't make sense to me. And I know I've been saying that a lot throughout this entire video, but it's true. It's just that certain elements of it just don't make sense to me. But moving on from there, the whole poison element. Now, I was thinking that maybe what was going on in the water was sort of a disease, like because of the crash of the rocket ship, it had sent some sort of material into the water, and maybe the bacteria from it was building up over time, and that's why, you know, the number of people that have gotten sick and died has increased over time. But with the ending of the episode there, it's Nightshade. So, I don't know, there's still a chance, I suppose, that something of that came from the humans that had been there previously, but I guess that's just something that'll have to be sort of explained a bit more over the next few episodes. But yeah, the whole the actual poison aspect of it does make a lot of sense now that, you know, they've fleshed out more of what's actually going on. And then when it came to the plan of the city administrator taking the second elder hostage and taking his sash, visibly that makes sense, but his voice is different. Like, he did an imitation shortly when one of the lower level Sensorites came near, but that was just for a moment. And again, maybe it's just me, but it seems like the people he'll actually typically be communicating with, unless, like, over the next few episodes he actually does start building up a rebellion of lower people who haven't seen or talked to the second elder much, if at all, before, that really no one in the upper class is going to believe that he is actually the second elder, at least from my perspective. And then finally, the concept of monsters. Now, I don't know, I found it strange, like they had talked about animals being there on that planet earlier, either in this episode or the previous one. But they hadn't mentioned monsters at all until they went to the aqueduct. So, I don't know, but part of me wants to think that the monsters either, one, aren't real, or two, they're not really monsters. And my theory going into the next couple episodes is that it's not actually monsters. Perhaps while two of the humans went off in their spaceship and it exploded, but they didn't know what happened to the other three, they just suspected that the other three snuck on board and fought those two humans. That perhaps it's the remaining three humans that are actually in the aqueduct, but perhaps they've gone crazy to a degree, like John, due to the exposure to the telepathic mind waves, or possibly due to being abused by someone like the city administrator with their telepathic powers. Perhaps they've been driven mad, and that's why perhaps people that have gone in there to check the aqueduct before have not returned, because the humans have gone so mad that they are monstrous to a degree. And that's going to be my theory going into the next few episodes anyway, but I'm really curious to hear what you all have to say about these episodes. If you're like me and new to the classic era, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about these episodes. In addition to the previous ones, which hopefully you commented on before. And I'm really looking forward into getting to the next ones and just closing this chapter, because this definitely was a slow burn to begin with, but I feel like we're definitely picking up steam, and these last two episodes should prove rather interesting, to say the least. So, yeah, as I said, I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts in the comments down below, both on the episodes themselves as well as, you know, what I've had to say. And just to let you know, after the next few episodes are complete, on the BritBox, I don't have access to the following story or the actual conclusion to Season 1 of Doctor Who. But I finally got the DVD, and I will be able to watch The Reign of Terror, all 6 episodes, although several of them have been made into animated stills and things like that. Basically, I've been told this should be a rather interesting experience, but I will be able to close out the first season as expected. Well, not as expected, but in a much better way than I had hoped for, because originally, as far as I knew, the Sensorites would be the finale for Season 1 for me. So I'm glad I'll be able to make that difference. But until next time, everyone, I am Papa Kenn. I will see you for Part 3 of the Sensorites. And until then, Alonzi!